you have to be 100% committed, because if you're, and that's one thing that every single investor or similar looks at, because if you're not, there's no chance.
This is the How to Quit Working Show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working Show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working Show. Today we are going to be talking to Kevin Petrovich, one of the founders of FlightCar. And FlightCar is a really interesting company with they've just figured out some resources that are sitting out there that aren't being used, and a way to get those resources used and build a business out of it. I'm not going to tell you anymore. I want to let Kevin tell you all about it on this episode of the How to Quit Working Show. But before we jump into that, I want to remind you that we've got this great community over on Facebook. You can get there by going to howtoquitworking.com/group and then just click on join group. That'll take you right over to Facebook, and then we'll get your request approved right away, and you can jump right in there and start communicating and interacting and having conversations and making friends with other people just like you who have realized that there is a better way of doing life besides just going to a 9-to-5 job working for somebody else. Speaking of people who believe there's a better way than just going to a 9-to-5 job, Kevin, welcome to the How to Quit Working Show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. Now, there's so many interesting things about what you've got going on. You and your partner Raul have started a business called FlightCar, and we're going to talk about that. But the first thing that I want to ask you is, what were you guys doing, and what made you say, I think we're going to start a business? Because you're of the age where you're supposed to be going to college and getting a job.
Yeah, so it's a really great question, one that a lot of people wonder about. And I don't think that there was sort of one point. I think that it was progressive. So Rajul and I have worked together on a number of different things in the past, including a nonprofit. So we've done a lot of work together. And one day we were just talking about the sharing economy as a whole. Sort of companies that we had seen in the space, stuff like Airbnb that was really successful, and was really taking advantage of people's increasing ability and desire to share unused assets. And we had also read about some car sharing programs, and we thought that it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
At the time, we did a lot of traveling, and we sort of realized that at the airport you often have one parking lot with all the rental cars and another parking lot with all of the long-term parking. And as we were talking about this, we sort of just said, hey, would it be possible to theoretically combine these two into one? So that was where the idea came from. I think it took several months of just research, so we understood more about the space, understood more about the market, and understood more about like the opportunity. Right, we wanted to be sure that there was a business, that we could lock down all of the important bits like the insurance, that the business could actually make money, and we wanted to understand the costs of everything before we decided that, hey, we actually wanted to devote time and really start this.
Amazing. So our listeners want to know, like, why did you decide to start a business instead of just kind of taking a more normal route, getting a job and going to college and all that kind of stuff?
I think that it plays a little bit into the personality of Rajul and I. We've always sort of worked together on trying new things, and I think we were, to a certain extent, we were just bored and not all that engaged, with going to school, and we sort of just wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And we were looking for something interesting to do. So we just, when we came up with this idea, it seems like a relatively logical thing in the context of the rest of the sharing economy, right? If people are doing all this other stuff, this would seem like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But nobody has done it before. So that's why we're sort of asking, there's got to be a reason that no one has done it before. There's got to be, a reason that it's not possible. But as we worked through it, we couldn't find anything, and that we thought it was just such a good opportunity that we sort of looked at it and said, hey, if we sort of hit the worst case scenario and it doesn't work out, we can always go back to college, but we just wanted to seize the opportunity right then. We wanted to start because we felt that if we didn't, either we wouldn't be in a position to later on, or maybe somebody else would take the opportunity and be first, and then we'd sort of lose the advantage of being first.
Excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about what is FlightCar all about.
So FlightCar is a peer-to-peer car sharing company that focuses exclusively on airports and travelers. So what that means is that if you own a car, you can park it with us at the airport. So we have 10 different locations now throughout the country, near 10 different airports, where if you're traveling out, you can park your car and go on your way. We'll take you right to the airport. While you're away, we actually find other drivers who are flying into that same airport to rent your car out. So as the owner, the advantage is that you don't have to pay anything for parking. The parking is free for your entire trip. You can make some money on the car as well when the car is rented out, just depending on the mileage that it's driven. And we also wash and clean the car before and after every rental, so you get a nice clean car when you return. To top it all off, of course, it's all insured. That's the number one question most people have. It's all insured with our $1 million liability policy, full collision coverage as well for your car. So if anything does go wrong, it's sort of all covered on our end. Your insurance never has to be involved, so your rates wouldn't go up or nothing like that, basically.
Wow. Okay, so let me make sure that I understand this. So if I am a traveler, I live in St. Louis, so and I'm traveling to, say, Los Angeles for 2 weeks. I park my car at the airport, and normally I would pay money to the airport or to a private company to let me park my car there for 2 weeks. And the best rate I can get here in St. Louis is about $10 a day, I think.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So, yeah. But the alternative that you're offering is I drop my car off with you, and you wash it. You don't charge me anything to park it, and you rent it out to people who are staying in St. Louis while I'm gone, and so they can drive it rather than getting a typical rental from Avis or Rent-A-Car, one of the big folks like that. And then you wash it again when they're done driving it, and I can potentially make money off of the amount that it's driven while I'm out of town, and I get a clean car. It's insured up to $1 million. Didn't cost me anything, and I can even make money.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the benefit on the renter side. So if you're flying to LA and you want to rent a car, you can also rent somebody else's car through FlightCar as well. And the key benefit there is that it generally is a lower price than with a conventional rental car company. Sure. But also it's a much wider selection of cars. If you want some kind of specialty car, people drive all sorts of stuff, not sort of just rental car fleet like vehicles. So there's a lot of different and very interesting cars that we often get.
I see. Wow. So really what you've done is you've seen this asset, and the asset is this gigantic, I don't want to go to long-term parking, there's like this gigantic lot. It's a couple of garages worth of cars that are just sitting there completely unused. And what you and Rajul said was, well, why can't we somehow leverage that?
Yes, that's exactly right. It's sort of, when you look at, there's some companies that do this sort of car sharing thing within the neighborhood, and that was part of where the inspiration came from. But really, as a user, the only benefit, or as a car owner, the only benefit I get is that I make some money. But in return, I have to go and I have to do all the work in terms of setting up the rentals. I have to communicate with all the potential renters, talk to them, figure out if my schedule aligns with them. I have to go meet them, give them the keys. It's a little bit of a hassle. So What we said is, we can take this concept that people already seem to be adapting and say, not only can you make some money, you can also save a lot of money at the airport, but we can also make it super easy because you don't have to do any of the work, right? We do it for you. We clean the car, we talk to the customers, we obviously we do all the airport transportation, we meet the customers. So it's really easy, and it's sort of like this baby step for a lot of people into the sharing economy and similar types of companies.
Amazing stuff. One of the things that you said early on was you said that you guys spent a decent amount of time doing research to understand the industry and understand the space. And that's one of the things that I hear a lot on this show from successful businesses is that they spend a lot of time really, really understanding their industry, their competition, the market, and all that stuff. Tell us a little bit more about kind of that. What made you decide that you really needed to understand it, and what did you learn that was interesting?
So again, a lot of times I think when you want to start a business, it helps to be, I guess, a veteran of the business, right? It helps to understand the industry, understand the challenges that are in the industry already, understand how the industry does certain things, why they do it that way, and because with that foundation, you can sort of go and say, being armed with all of this knowledge, what would I do differently? How would I change what the big guys do, and how would I sort of reimagine this process? When you don't, unfortunately, we didn't have that benefit in this case. We didn't have any of that knowledge, so we had to start from the ground up and say, let me go and let me understand how Hertz does stuff. How does enterprise operate? How do these locations work? Again, a particular challenge. I would say most people have probably rented cars at some point in the past. You have to understand that at this point, Rajul and I were both 17, so we had never actually directly rented them before. Okay. And couldn't. So that was an additional hurdle. But we wanted to just understand, how the operations run, why they do the way they do. What do the costs look like, right? How much does insurance cost? How many people could we realistically take to and from the airport from a given distance with a given size vehicle? How does that work out? How much does it cost to find somebody online who's looking to rent a car, get them to your site, and get them to rent, right? How much could we charge them? How competitive do we have to be price wise? There's just a ton of different questions that we wanted to ask. So we made sure that at the end of the day, when you ran some hypothetical numbers for a business, at scale with a lot of customers, that there was an opportunity to make some money there.
Yeah.
And also that we wouldn't run into any kind of insurmountable hurdles, right? The insurance is a great example of that, because at the time, and to an extent that's still the case, the industry for insuring this kind of business, this kind of peer-to-peer sharing business is really small. There's probably only 2 companies in the country that do it. So we wanted to learn about those companies, see how much it would cost, see if we would be able to get those policies all together. Because if we wouldn't be able to do that, we wouldn't even be able to get off the ground.
Excellent. So you were really looking for, what are those big things that might really trip us up? Not every little detail, but what are those big things? And it sounds like you identified early on insurance is one of those big rocks that we got to really make sure that we understand and have our arms around to understand if we have a real business model here.
Yeah. There were a number of others. Another one was how we would get funding from people to sort of start out.
Yeah.
When you have an app or something like that, you can build the app and put it on the App Store for a low 4-digit number of dollars. That's not the case here, because you have to have there's guarantees that you have to pay out with the insurance, parking lots. Basically you need people working at your parking lot because it's open 24 hours a day, right? Because people expect that when you're dealing with the airport in most cases. Sure. So there's a lot of sort of money that needed to be put in up front before you could even start, before you had any customers. And so that's tough, because in a lot of cases, you can get people to give you venture funding or money if you have a compelling model and compelling idea. But once you show that, hey, you have some customers, hey, this is growing, hey, it's off the ground, it's very hard to do that when you don't have any customers and you don't have any revenue. So that was another challenge. Even a third challenge was just thinking about, in the earliest days, how this was going to happen, right? We thought through about 7 or 8 different models on how this was going to work, from having our own parking lot to partnering with an existing parking lot or hotel or something like that, partnering with the airports themselves, doing some kind of fully autonomous solution where we might have like a kiosk on the airport and people would drop off keys. There were a lot of different ways to do it. Yeah. The way we ultimately chose was sort of the most operationally intensive and most hands-on way that we could have possibly chosen. And it also is, I think, the slowest and most costly to expand with, because you have to have all this kind of infrastructure and people and everything around. But in the end, I think it has the best rewards, because you make it super easy for people to use. It's not new. It's not very complicated. It's what people are used to. And the other good thing is that you can control the user experience by sort of being there and making sure that, yes, the car is clean for every guest who's coming in to rent a car. That's really good, because when you rent a car, you expect it to be clean, right? If you're not there, with Airbnb or some kind of similar sharing economy company, the company itself can't guarantee that sort of standard of service. It hopes and it asks the owner of the item to ensure that, but sometimes it doesn't happen. When you're there, you can make sure of it.
I see. So the interesting thing is that you didn't, a lot of folks, I think, make the mistake in business of saying, well, it's easier this way, so I'm going to do it the easier way. You guys made a really intentional decision to do it kind of the hard way, because you saw the benefits of doing it that way.
Yes. I think we decided that this was going to be the hardest to start. But honestly, when we, like I said, we were doing a lot of calculations with figuring out the economics. We saw that the other ways would be more expensive down the line. And, we were sort of saying, hey, this is going to really only be successful if we have a lot of customers and we have a lot of volume. So we need to do what's best for the company at that stage.
I see. Well, tell us about how are things going now?
So they're going really, really well. We just opened our 10th location yesterday. It's in San Jose, California. So that brings us up to 10, and that's really quick, because even as late as last September of 2014, we only had 3. So we've been really, really quick about opening up new ones, new locations. Since we closed a new round of funding, $13.5 million in venture funding, at the end of August of last year as well. So as soon as we got that, we sort of kicked it up a notch. Went from 3 to 10 locations. Have more planned, of course, always.
Yeah.
And so it's going really well. We had our busiest time by far over the holiday season now. Sort of Christmas to New Year. Over 1,000 cars on the road at the same time, which was really cool.
Wow.
It was a little bit tough, because we saw that with such high volume, some of our processes and some of our operations broke down a little bit. We sort of couldn't handle that much volume on all fronts. But luckily, we have a little bit of a lower season now. January and February is a lower season to respond and change how we do things. So we're ready for the sort of large wave, of summer.
Excellent. Now, how long have you guys been at this?
So we came up with the idea and started doing the research, like I said, in February of 2012.
Okay.
we started operations in February of 2013 in San Francisco. It was our first location.
Okay.
So we have had an actual location operating and customers for 2 years and a couple of days. I think 3 days.
Okay. You and Rajul were 17 when you started this, so by my calculations, you're probably right around 20 right now, right? 2021?
Yes. I am 20, yes.
So not only are you not old enough to drink in the U.S.,
in the U.S., yes.
you're also, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you normally have to be 25 years old to rent a car?
Yes. In most cases, you have to be over 25 to rent without an extra fee. There are some exceptions to that in some cases where you can pay a fee in order to rent. So I sort of work around it to the extent that I can. But certainly it was not possible for us to rent when we started.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the reasons why FlightCar has a rather generous underage policy that actually allows people that are 18 or over to rent with some additional sort of qualifications and restrictions.
Well, that is really interesting because you are jumping in and competing with and disrupting an industry that actually is telling you you're too young to even be a customer. So I think that is so cool, and I think that's so exciting that you have just in so many different ways said to hell with the establishment, to hell with you guys that are telling us we're too young, that have an old, outdated business model. We've got a better way to do it, and we're going to get out there and we're really going to kick some ass.
Yeah. What's interesting is that, with 2 years of operating experience, I can now say that I fully understand the large company's decision to try to cull back drivers under 25. I fully understand why they do it, and I think that it makes quite a bit of business sense to do that. I wouldn't say that I would do the same, but having the experience and sort of seeing what happens, I totally understand. I totally understand why they do it. So that's just something, you learn all, you understand, and you learn all of this stuff as you keep working and as you experience the industry more and more.
Sure. But again, the pattern that you and Rajul have taken with FlightCar has not been one of doing things the easy way.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been tricky. There's been a lot of points where we were very close to death or failure, or very very close. The fact that we're here and we're still going strong, I think is in a lot of ways very lucky. I think we made a lot of very key decisions correctly at very important times. But I think there certainly is a degree of luck involved as well. So,
absolutely. What's the biggest lesson that you've learned on this journey?
I think that one thing that I realized more than anything is that it won't. Whenever you're trying to do something like this, starting a company is just one example of many things. But is that oftentimes it is not. You have to be really, really persistent and really resilient, and sort of just extremely focused on getting the result. Because if you sort of give in to the first setback, you're not going to get anywhere. If you give into the third setback, you're still not going to get anywhere. You sort of have to keep fighting through. I think you have to be extremely sort of resilient and persistent in whatever you're doing. I mean, some stuff is very easy and some things are much more challenging. But I guess the other thing is that you have to be very, very focused on the goal, and what you're trying to do. So if, you have some deadline of something, say we need to be accepting our first customer on February 1st, right? That, if you make that your goal, you have to make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can, to meet that, and that everything else that isn't important in meeting that goal sort of falls outside. I think it's true with any size company. Maybe once you've started it's a little bit more true, but it's very easy to sort of get caught up in stuff that's, just not all that important in terms of, getting your overall goals and larger stuff done, and that's pretty bad. So,
what's an example, Kevin, of something that you see people getting caught up in that's not very important?
I think a great example is where sort of just our development, right, on our website and our systems. So we've got a number of we've sort of got a number of interconnected systems that play together, right? You've got the customer website, which is sort of one very small part of it. You've got a huge backend. You have the system that our parking lot staff members use. You have the system that our dispatchers use to handle airport pickups. So and many more. There's just a ton of different systems. And so right now we sort of have this big project going on where we want to launch out our app for users, something onto the App Store for your phone, because we don't have one yet. But the thing is, obviously, our development resources are limited. So, if we sort of go about it day to day, and we sort of have a system where we prioritize what we're working on, what happens is inevitably you sort of have what claws its way to the top are these like, oh, I have this bug, I have this issue, I just need to make this one small change, stuff like that, and this. That can, something that can improve my revenue by $100 a day, for example, or there's a million different sort of changes.
Sure.
But on the other side, if you're trying to get this app done, you have to sort of step back and say, hey, we're doing this work, spending this day or these few days or this week, working on this app stuff. It's not, I don't get any immediate, instant gratification. There's no sort of right away result. It's not like I can't do a to-do list check mark that, hey, I solved this problem, but it gets you to the larger picture. So you have to be so I'm the sort of the person that deals with, assigning and prioritizing the work that that the team does. And I have to be really careful that, when appropriate, I send when someone is like, hey, I just need the small fix, I'm like, no, you're not going to get the small fix because I'm reserving all of the development time, for app work or other sort of long-term, bigger picture work. I could fill up our sort of our list of things with bugs and small features all day long, but that wouldn't get us toward the larger goal.
Great advice, Kevin. What's next for Flightcar?
So, like I mentioned, we're absolutely looking at more cities all the time. So we're really we're hoping to open in a couple more cities in the near future. I think what we're really trying to do is get to the point and build up a network where we are able to connect travelers on both ends of their trip wherever they go. So, if you live in St. Louis, right? We want to have a location in St. Louis, and then we want to have a location again, so you can park your car, and we want to have a location wherever you need to go. To rent. So whether you're going to LA, whether you're going to New York, Miami, Las Vegas, Boston, we want to be able to have something at all of those locations. So I guess, Flightcar can be your car sharing program of choice, wherever you go.
Exciting stuff, Kevin. What would you tell somebody who's sitting out there thinking, wow, this all sounds fascinating and I have a similar idea or something in my mind like that I'd like to do? What kind of advice would you want to give those folks?
Well, I think it would be two-part. I think one part would be sort of very sort of optimistic, and the other side would be much more realistic. And I have to say that I try to look at things from a realistic perspective all the time. So I mean, the first is that you're not gonna get anywhere by sort of just sitting there and thinking about doing something, right? The only way you're going to make progress is by actually starting. In our case, the starting was the research and learning more and putting together documents and stuff like that. But you have to start somewhere. You can't sort of snap your fingers and next day it's like, hey, here's my business. On the flip side, I would definitely say that in a lot of cases, all people read about and all people see, and it applies to me too, is the very best, startups, the very best successes. And I think that for someone to go and sort of start their first thing for the first time and believe that they can get there, or believe that it is easy to get there, I would definitely say is not good. Because I can say that, I think it's great to aim high, and I think you need to aim big, and you need to have a big vision. But I think at the same time, you have to be realistic that even for people who are running really successful companies now, it often takes, one or two false starts, one or two failures, stuff that doesn't work, for you to, realize, or find something that does work. So I think you sort of have to go in with the expectation that you may fail a couple of times before getting somewhere. And when you do get somewhere, it will not be easy. It will be very, 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 very tough. So that's why I think you have to at some point when you start sort of working on a company project like this full time, you have to be 100% committed, because and that's one thing that every single investor or similar looks at, because if you're not, there's no chance.
If you're not, there's just
no. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just reiterating what you said.
Yeah,
I thought it was such a great point. If you're not committed, there's just no chance. That's all there is to it. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show, and thanks for sharing all of this great advice and all of the hard-earned lessons that you have learned in starting Flightcar. I wish you the best of success to you and Rajul. Where can we go to get more information about you and Flightcar, and how specifically can we find out if Flightcar is in our city or a city that we're traveling to?
Yeah, so our website, flightcar.com, just as it sounds, is really great. You can check out all of our locations. You can sign up for an email list to be alerted when we have new locations. You can read all about sort of how it works. There's some video. You can read about the insurance and stuff like that. Just finer points. People often have questions. They sort of they think through it, and they come up with a bunch of questions on how it works. I think our site does a really, really good job of answering people's questions about it. So.
Excellent. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on the show, and I can't wait to see what amazing things you and Rajul do with Flightcar.
Great. Thanks. Great to be here.
I think the thing that I love the most about what Kevin and his partner have done with Flightcar is that they have said, you know what, we could take the easy way, or we could take the hard way. And they have made the decision in many cases with their business model to do the harder thing. And there's so many reasons why that is so smart, because that's going to make it harder for their competitors to get in. It's going to give them a better quality product. And I think, at the end of the day, you just can look at it and you can say, you know what, these guys really, really care about what they're doing. They're not doing it one way because it's easy. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and it's going to make their business successful. So, great interview. Go over, if you travel at all, go over to flightcar.com and see if they are in your city, and see if you can make some money renting out your car, or maybe when next time you're in a Flightcar city, you can actually use one of the Flightcar cars and get a better rate than you would normally with a rental car. So go to flightcar.com, check that out. Now, speaking of quitting your job and starting a business, if you are really serious about having a mentor by your side as you start your business, go to howtoquitworking.com/coaching and reach out to Heather, our How to Quit Working coach, and see if that is something that might be beneficial to you. Again, howtoquitworking.com/coaching, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the How to Quit Working Show.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working Show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.